day job, or my job is I teach at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Next day he didn't come home. The following day he didn't come home, and my mom told us that our dad was in prison, and he was incarcerated under some trumped up charges, and that we don't know when he was coming home. So I was never nurtured in a Christian home, as far as I could tell, that I didn't really have any religion. I think a lot of Westerners assume that if you're from Korea or Asia, particularly Korea, you must be either Confucian or Buddhist. There are, preponderant number of people like that, but then there are also people who are non-religious, and I think ours was one of them. Occasionally we would have, church attendance and things of that, so they're more like a calendrical piety rather than anything that was meaningful and substantial. So think about when you were 9, and I saw that there was one young lady who was 9 years old, and so I was that young lady's age when my father was thrown into prison. And one thing that happened to me, and because nobody ever really told me about God. No one really kind of explicitly taught me about justice per se. We were learning civics and ethics and such. But I remember this very distinct moment saying to God, God, if you're around, please send my dad home. And I don't know, and saying, you can't be real. You cannot possibly exist because you threw my dad into prison and threw away the key. So to make a long story short, my father was released from prison 3 years later. So I was in grade 6. And the next 3 years are pretty much infernal, very hellish. So the Korean government made it very difficult for us to live in Korea. So although we didn't have the sort of asylum status, but we ended up in the United States. And I left Korea thinking that, okay, this is a country, though it's my putative motherland, but it has done nothing less than just nearly destroy my life. But, so Yale was a very exciting time period. My sister was getting engaged, and one of the things that my mom asked me to do, and if my dad had asked me, if my sister had asked me, I wouldn't have done it. But my mom said, you know what? Could you go to this retreat that your brother-in-law-to-be is going to be speaking at? I said, what is that? I don't want to go to retreat, and because it's Christmas break, I was going to have a great time with some of my friends, not my church friends, but my other friends, and Mom said, this is going to be held in the Poconos, and I think he, along with other people, are organizing this college retreat. I think you would, and she said, you don't have to go because of Jesus. She said, but do it for me and for the family. So it had very little to do with saving faith as in F-A-I-T-H, but it had everything to do with saving face of the family, F-A-C-E. So I went to the retreat regretting, what am I doing here? And everything about the retreat was terrible. The food was bad, the kind of people that were there, I'm like, I don't want to hang out with. But then I was feigning to be interested because my brother-in-law was always asking me, is everything okay? I said, yeah, right. Secretly, I didn't like him. And I was like, why is my sister marrying this loser guy? And he said he was a medical doctor, but he decided God called him to ministry. And I talked to him, I was like, why would you do that? He's like, God called me. And I remember telling him with this one-word answer, so? He said, God called me. And I said, so? And he looked at me, and he's still married to my sister, and he's a great, great guy. And last evening of the retreat, and I was so ready to go home. I was like, yeah, this is it. Everything. And because I remember I did my duty, right? Just I had to show up to the retreat. Mom said, you don't have to do anything, just go stay for the whole time. Kind of minimal requirement, right? So I'm going there, and then the last night of the retreat, and I'm not making this up, the whole thing sucked. And the praise team was up here, and they weren't like these two bands that were up here last night and today, really great. They were kind of a group of college, pastors and seminarians, mostly from the seminary that I ended up going to later on. But anyway, they were playing this song, and I never heard the song before. I had heard of Augustine because of, Western Civ, but I didn't really know about Augustine's conversion narrative. So this is what happened. They're singing this song. I later on found out it was written by and was Keith Green. And I later on found out it's from 1 Samuel. It's a song that some of the older people here probably remember or recognize the song, to obey is better than sacrifice. I don't need your money, I want your life. Bam! You know what happened? I'm sitting in the back row. Nothing was good about this retreat. Nothing about the musical aesthetics was pleasing to me. I never heard this song before, and guess what happened? I began to sob. Something about that song, "To obey is better than sacrifice, I don't need your money, I want your life," just spoke into my soul. And I just began bawling. Because a week before the retreat, I told my sister something that hurt her, but it was sincere coming from me. I said, I don't know what you're doing marrying this loser guy, but it's your life. You're going to med school, and you're going to be married to this poor pastor. I'm an econ major at Yale. I'll make a lot of money after I'm done. I'm going to give you a lot of money to help your ministry. Right? So that was just a week before. And imagine, try to put yourself in that situation. You're not introduced to Christianity properly, and you hear this song that was terrible, but the words are such that "to obey is better than sacrifice. I don't need your money, I want your life." And guess what? I had heard it as if it was God. Remember, it was, "I don't need your money, I want your life." I didn't hear it as if the praise team member was speaking to me. I heard it as if it was God speaking to me and says, "I don't need your money, I want your life." And from age 9 until that moment, I never cried. I never cried. Because my dad, if he hadn't taught me a lot, he did teach me, real men don't cry. So I said, "Oh yes sir, I will not cry." But at that moment in my life, all the defenses that I'd built up just broke down. I couldn't tell you, so that's why I couldn't tell you what happened. It wasn't theologically I'm a Calvinist, but it wasn't by reading John Calvin. It wasn't by reading anything of that sort of apologetic literature. It was by listening to a song that I hadn't heard before. And I still remember that experience was what really kind of turned me on to the gospel. Among other things one could say, it was that experience that really basically converted me, if you want to use the language of conversion.
1 Samuel 15:22, and Samuel said, "Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. I don't want your money, I want your life." 1 Samuel 15, again, is where that song originates from with Keith Green. And I'm going to have the original song linked in the description. Of course, what 1 Samuel is reviewing is whenever Saul, King Saul, kind of half obeyed the Lord. And the Lord's reminding him, as he's going to make a sacrifice to the Lord's reminding him that what's ultimate, what's important most to the Lord is our ultimate obedience, not half obedience, but being all in. Now, this video is one of about 30 atheist to Christianity testimonies posted here so far. Christ is King. Every knee will bow. Absolutely.